Good morning, Queen's Voice. Peter Kufalis here. Today we're at one of our favorite haunts, Jackson Diner, Northern Boulevard, Jackson Heights. But we do have a special guest today, Tom, who is a small landlord who came to us to share a story where he's in housing court. He was in Supreme Court. Come December, it's going to be an 8-year case, unfortunately, where he's trying to get a tenant out who's not paying, who's basically gaming the system to take advantage of him. And obviously, as a small landlord, he would like to get this person out, get somebody else in the apartment paying market rent so he can, pay his expenses and whatnot. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I know you said this December is going to be 8 years. How did this come about, and what are some of the shenanigans you've been dealing with in court, in the two courts anyway?
All right. I was actually the caretaker to a disabled tenant. Okay? A little unusual, but it worked out that way.
Okay.
I had gotten previous young women to be her companions, okay, just to check on her. The first 3 were fine. This was the 4th one. Unfortunately, the 4th one started getting very pushy, very controlling, and there was some friction. Now, when Linda died, she started playing games and stalling, and she didn't want to leave, and she wanted to keep renting the room, and a lot of nonsense. So then she just decided she's not going to pay any rent. Period. She tried to deduct 3/4 of the rent for her own nonsensical repairs and stuff.
Now, you had mentioned, just to give our viewers a perspective, unfortunately here in New York City, the courts are very anti-landlord friendly, and everything's very, pro-tenant, from legitimate to the worst tenants. They're going to side with the tenants. Now, you had mentioned something to me that she had hung a medicine cabinet and tried to bill you $400, and she had a closet painted and tried to bill you $800.
Yes.
So that is that's like $1,200. So very expensive for 2 small jobs. I'm assuming the closet wasn't a giant walk-in, regular closet. So just so I put it in perspective, this is some of the things that not just Tom's dealing with, but many small landlords throughout New York City are dealing with on a daily basis.
Yes, anything that's wrong with the apartment, okay, any minor little thing is worth half the rent. If the doorknob is squeaky, that's worth half the rent. It's just wildly out of proportion, and they feel that way, so then they want satisfaction for that. So now Linda dies, and so she's in the apartment making all these massive deductions for nonsense and ignoring, paying any rent. So now we turn around, we wind up in Supreme Court. Then she files 24 complaints as part of her Supreme Court filing. Then they just start asking for adjournments. We switched the lawyer. The lawyer's got a doctor's appointment. Oops, we changed the lawyer back again.
Now, how many adjournments, I know we spoke on the phone, but let our viewers know, how many adjournments in total in 8 years, more or less, has this tenant put on the courts? How many adjournments?
I believe it's 10 at this point, plus I think another 4 because of the judges. They just rotate the judges in and out, and I go back to the bottom of the pile.
So 10 to 14 adjournments in about a year, in about 8 years.
Right.
Because December makes 8 years.
Right.
And obviously, with the adjournments, it's a time tactic. They're running out the clock. They're trying to buy some time. And obviously, you're the one at the end of the day who's suffering because it's your place. You need her out, and you need to get, bills in.
Well, I'm losing the month's rent every month.
And you still have to pay your bills, your taxes, mortgage, utilities, so on, maintenance, so on and so on.
Right. So she gets free legal aid because she basically doesn't work. She does a little part-time work here and there, so she gets free legal aid because she's not
So taking
working.
advantage of a small homeowner, a small landlord, getting free housing, and now because she works very little or doesn't work, she's taking advantage of our system, getting free counsel.
Right. And then they simply keep asking for adjournments, and then they get paid for the adjournments because they keep saying that they're not ready.
Okay.
So now that's the first problem.
So big delay tactic.
Right. And they're getting paid to say that they're not ready for work.
And the taxpayers are paying those attorneys.
Right.
Okay.
So now a little over a year ago, we finally get into the deposition, she's getting killed at the deposition because everything that she said in the original complaint had a big wink to it, and, you know, she just played around the truth.
Sure.
Okay? Just to stall. So now I answered all the 24 complaints, and her own lawyer is starting to realize that they're a lot of nonsense. Okay? I wouldn't do work, and then I showed her 36 text messages saying I'm trying to get into the place to do work.
And that's a ploy that I've seen before, where the tenant or the holdover tenant, whatever you want to call them, will say, well, the owner's not sending contractors or anyone to fix this. And when you're showing text and emails saying, hey, I'm trying to, you're obviously putting holes in a story and debunking that you as a landlord are not trying to fix anything or do any maintenance.
Right. And then she was saying that Linda wasn't disabled. Until I pulled out the picture of Linda in a walker, and she's like, well, she got better and then she died.
Got better and then she died?
Yes. Okay? Then to explain the bathroom away, she started to say that, well, they were bathtub-sized holes in the floor. That she knew nothing about me doing any work in the bathroom, and she came home and there were bathtub-sized holes.
Just like that?
Yeah. Just nonsense.
So a lot of nonsense, yeah.
Okay? No pictures, no proof, no nothing. She just says there were giant holes in the floor.
So the lady's going in telling the judge, there's holes, all these problems, and without any evidence, the judge is leaning towards believing this person.
Well, we haven't even gotten in front of the judge.
Oh, wow.
We just keep doing new motions and new stuff. Meanwhile, I have the text messages, her thanking me for finishing.
So you haven't done anything, but yet she thanks you.
Yeah.
A little contradictory.
Just a bit. So now they turn around and they keep stalling the case. So we file a motion for her to pay the use and occupancy money, which was 1/3 of the rent.
But something would be better than nothing at this point.
Right.
So that's why landlords, just so our viewers know, sometimes the judge is here, or the landlord will ask, give us something at least while we're working this case, because something is better than nothing when you're losing a lot of money for 8 years on your case.
Right. So we had that stipulation from housing court. Okay? So now when we get to the deposition, she has to explain why she's not paying the $850 for the use and occupancy.
Now, let me ask you, if I may, what would be I know she's getting a break at $850, what would be the regular rent if she wasn't getting a break? What would that cost?
Well, what the old tenant was paying was $2,400.
So $800 and change versus $2,400 is a big disparity.
Right. It's 1/3 the rent.
1/3 of the rent. A big disparity. Okay.
So now my lawyer's asking, well, why are you not paying anything?
Sure. Where's the money?
So she says that it was too inconvenient for her to go to the bank and then make a second trip to the post office, where her bank is 200 feet from the post office. So she says she was too busy to mail the check to me.
So she can't get to the bank or the post office. She can't mail anything to you. Now, let's talk about something that we spoke on the phone about. Being that we're in 2024, we live in a digital world, what about a Venmo or a PayPal or some kind of electronic payment? How about that where she could do it from the comfort of her own couch?
Most of my other tenants pay with Zelle. She has Zelle. I checked. She has Zelle, I have Zelle. Her same phone number, my same phone number. But she has an answer for that her lawyer wanted her only to mail it.
Okay.
So therefore it's circular that she doesn't have to pay anything.
But she can't get to the post office, but her lawyer wants her to mail it.
Yes.
Okay, so that sounds like a lot of baloney.
Yes. So now we filed just for the use and occupancy money. Okay? Forget all the other issues.
You're trying to get a
just
bare bones.
Enforce this.
A bare bones payment.
Right. So again, they did a stalling tactic. The day before court, they gave us a 20-something page response at 2 o'clock in the afternoon trying to get another adjournment. Okay? Now they claim that the case is too old, some convoluted thing that the case is too old for her to enforce the court stipulation for her to pay the partial rent.
So the case is too old. So are they expecting you to regurgitate this case and start from the beginning for another 8 years?
No, it's that she doesn't have to pay the agreed use and occupancy because the case is too old.
But she's still able to stay there, unfortunately, not paying anything.
Right.
So where's the justice, where's the common sense in this?
It doesn't. There is none because the courts are so overwhelmed with cases that they tend to do what everyone else does is inbox, outbox. What's the easiest thing? They've got 24 cases a day to do.
Just another folder on the docket.
Get it from here, get it from the inbox to the outbox.
So what Tom is saying is, unfortunately, we've heard this in various courts here, and we're speaking just here in New York City, that they're overwhelmed, understaffed, and after COVID, obviously, they still haven't caught up, which we understand. But they're not looking to resolve these cases and get justice. They're looking to just hot potato, kind of pass the buck. Is that
Yes.
Is that safe to say?
Yes.
That's been your experience.
Yes, because that's what people tend to do.
And in other states, if we speak to any friends or relatives that we know who live in other cities and other states outside of New York, some of them it's as easy as a couple of days, a month, a week or so, and obviously
30 days.
30 days, very quick, without going through all the hoops and barrels you've been jumping through, let alone almost 8 years coming up in December. So it's got to be mind-boggling. You as a small owner, losing a lot of money, you're bleeding out money, you're spending money on lawyers, you're spending time, you're doing all the filings, and this person's allowed to sit there and game the system for 8 years, while in other states it would be 30 days, if that, and see you later, Charlie, and you get your property back, you rent it, and you go on with your life. And unfortunately here, the courts are against the small owners. You're not an owner of a casino or a big 100 apartment building. This guy's a small landlord, and he's getting creamed, and you're a taxpayer, and you're getting creamed in court. And getting the story's bad enough, but what gets to me is that the time frame where this gentleman's going to the court, 8 years coming up in December. I mean, that's insanity. How many cases could they have done? You could have had 100 cases worked out in 8 years already. You're on one case still. That's crazy.
Well, my extra annoyance is her own testimony contradicts her complaint, and now all the new motions contradict the other two in the first place. So I shouldn't have to provide evidence. Just read her complaints. I shouldn't have to provide pictures like I showed you,
Yes.
that there's no hole in the bathroom floor. Every 5-year-old has got a camera these days, a cell phone.
That's true.
A Facebook page.
So the point you're making is if there was all this horrible damage and poor conditions in the property, she would have had it documented and been, here, Judge, he's wrong. And obviously they would have creamed you in that. But obviously she doesn't have pictures because there's nothing wrong. Whatever she's saying is all false. And you don't have holes and craters in your floor.
Right. And that is from the day they filed the case. A lot of these things should have been included. Okay? So if she's saying that there's all these horrible conditions, that should be with the initial filing. Okay? Instead, everything is circular. So she winks and complains, I didn't live in the building. Because, kind of just winks at it. Like, no, I did live in the building. What are you talking about?
So obviously she's being coached how to game the system by time, run the clock out on your expense, unfortunately. Let me ask you this, if you could even just round it off, I'm not going to hold you to it. Just so our viewers know, this 8-year disgraceful battle you're going through with the courts not doing the right thing, how much money do you think it's cost you between the lost rent, the legal fees, the lawyer, everything? If you had a
rough
guess.
number, $350,000.
So our viewers here, $350,000 is not chump change. I'm sure you worked hard for your money. Retired now, right? So you've worked hard for your money.
I'm a civil servant.
Civil servant. So you're not. So civil servant. So he's obviously not making a huge pension or salary as a civil servant. All jokes aside, he's invested in some properties, trying to live the American dream, generate some revenue for yourself. And in 8 years, the man is out $350,000 to deal with tenant from hell, for a lack of terminology. And how? So, what is someone in your shoes supposed to do? You obviously don't have Bloomberg or Donald Trump as your uncle to bail you out, unfortunately. So, you're out $350,000. how long would it's going to take you a long time? Let's say you get this woman out tomorrow. It would take you a long time to just break even and get that money back, right? For a long time.
Oh, it's just going to go on for forever. And unfortunately, the only other game plan I have is to push up the other rents for the other 7 tenants. That is half of my increase. Is not just inflation, it's to make up for this nonsense. And there's no reason for this nonsense because the lawyers have concocted every sentence so that even though they're lying, they're not really lying because they put the wink in there.
It's like a white lie?
Well, it's like she had reason to believe that.
Oh, reason to okay.
Okay, but she's produced no proof. Okay? Yeah, Linda did get better because of her hip replacement surgeries. So, and technically she got a little bit better, and then she died.
Terrible.
So this is the level that they really have to start making these people produce evidence. Okay? Show me the holes in the floor. Show me that I lied.
A picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Right. Show me I didn't live in the building. Show me that.
Show me another lease from another rental.
Right. Show me the lease that the rent was. She said $18.50. That was nonsense. But they allow them to add all these little winks and cross your fingers and everything else, and nobody gets tired of it.
Now, you mentioned to me off camera that you can name them if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. But you mentioned to me that you had reached out to several elected officials, and unfortunately, nobody really wanted to lift a finger and help you. It was kind of, hey, too bad, you're, you know. So just so our viewers know, if you want to name them, you can. If you don't, but when you approach these elected officials and said, hey, my name's Tom, here's my situation, help me. What was the feedback that you received as a constituent, a taxpayer, and a citizen?
Well, let's put it this way. Our borough president grew up as a squatter, okay?
Okay.
And he complains publicly about how many times he got evicted, his family, okay? We went to John Liu, who's on the Judiciary Committee. John Liu completely blew off a dozen landlords, okay? His answer was, most tenants are paying their rent. I went to Toby.
Most tenants are paying the rent.
Right, that was his attitude. He's going to look into nothing, okay? We went to Toby Ann Stavisky, who's also on the Judiciary Committee. She says she's not doing anything to change any of the regulations because we're in court.
So 2 strikes with 2 elected officials. Okay.
More than that, my old councilman, Barbara Gigensky, same thing.
Strike 3. Okay.
Strike 3, not getting any help from any of the new council members either, okay? 90% of the elected officials in Queens and Brooklyn, city, state, and federal, all just blow it off.
So, with that being said, and I don't doubt it, but with that being said, so our viewers can put this in perspective, when in particular you're going to the people who are on the Judiciary Committee that have power, that could fix this problem, that could resolve things, maybe not right away, but set the tone that this won't happen to another time in the future, and they're blowing you off, what is the recourse when you have a broken court system and now you have a broken political system where they don't want to do anything with it? One of them told you, John Liu, well, most of them are paying. I mean, that's like if you own a department store and they say, well, most people are paying, forget about the shoplifters. What kind of logic is that?
Even Braunstein, you name them, okay? I won't even mention the few that are supporting me because I think they'll, you know,
fair enough.
They'll attack their offices, you know?
Sure.
But because they're going for the votes. Evil landlord is a vote getter, okay? And if you listen to some of the tenants with an open mind, everything that goes wrong in their life is because of their landlord. They're obese because of their landlord. She says the rent is too high for her to afford good food. So that's why she's there.
Okay.
Boyfriend and girlfriend beating the tar out of each other.
That's your fault.
It's somehow our fault.
And I'm assuming you're not in the matchmaking business for your tenants, so.
No, they bring in the boyfriend,
I know,
and
so
somehow it's our fault.
So the scapegoat of everyone's trouble seems to be the small landlord.
Yes.
Now, something I was thinking about, we see here in New York, especially properties that are multifamily. There's a lot of properties throughout the boroughs on the market. And I know that the economy's terrible, inflation, and et cetera. But do you think some of that has to do with people who've had experiences like you, or people who see people like you who've had these bad experiences? They're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to buy anything here in New York. You want to?
No, let's finish. Then we can order something.
So, would you think that people who may be sitting on the fence that have money are not buying stuff in New York, or are they going somewhere else to buy it because they don't want to wind up in your situation? Is that at least a large part of why there's a lot of inventory out there?
Well, there's two things happening. One, you're correct, okay? But individual landlords, especially as they get a little older, they'll just keep the apartment vacant because there's so much hassle and so many problems with it. Okay, I know people who have they'll have a 2-bedroom apartment. They don't want to get a roommate because they do this. In fact, this one has a 2-bedroom apartment, but she won't rent it out. She gave away all the furniture for the furnished 2-bedroom, the second bedroom. So now she can't rent it. She just got rid of it.
So basically, she can't do anything there. You're stuck in limbo with a holdover tenant from hell, unfortunately. $350,000 in 8 years is astronomical. I mean, it's real money. It's not money you find on the street. A lot of money. And being that you're a civil servant, it's obviously you're not a rich guy. You're trying to maintain a property. The taxes are expensive, mortgages are expensive, utility maintenance you got to take care of. Basic maintenance costs money.
And city regulations, they keep changing, adding these regulations like it's nothing.
And that's because you have 6 or more units, you fall into a different category regarding...
Right. They made us change the gas piping, which was actually against the code, to change it against the code. And then after I spent $4,000 to change the gas piping, they said, yeah, you're right, the code was correct in the first place. So just $4,000
just for nothing
went in the garbage. Scaffolding now, you waterproof the front of the building, you have to put sidewalk sheds up that are $20,000.
And they pay you and you're paying them by the day to rent it.
Right.
By the week, right?
So all of these things, it's landlord's money. It's not real money. Same with this local law 97 to put heat pumps in instead of gas furnaces. We got people with gas services, gas heating systems that are 2 or 3 years old that are super high efficiency, and they're like, no, rip them out, we want electric.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute waste of money, okay? That money could be
very expensive.
Better spent on a lot of other stuff. Speaking of which, you have the same thing is, you get no heat in violations if a tenant has an air conditioner in the window. Drafty air conditioners, you still get a no heat violation. They're allowed to have the windows open during a no heat inspection.
So just put that in perspective. We're approaching the winter season here in New York, where it gets very cold. So if you're in any structure, an apartment especially, and you open up the window and the heat, let's say you put even more than you're supposed to give, and that window's open, it's -2 out, 30 degrees, whatever it is, it's cold, and they bring that city inspector in. What's the point of doing it? Like, what's the point? It's not a fair test because that window's open.
They don't care.
It's just a way to get a violation so you get more money, you pay more money to the city.
Right, well, they feel obligated to give violations. So that's why when they come there for the 30th time on the same apartment, they will get into the finer and finer and finer detail of it and then use that in court. Where I look at it as, if you've already had 24 inspections and you found nothing serious, it's time to move on.
I agree.
But instead, code enforcement and the judges go, up, you still got a scratch over here. This doorknob is still a little sticky.
There's money on your, unfortunately for your pocket.
I have to now fix that. A cracked electrical plate. Anything to stall it. So now I lose 2 or 3 more months rent because of a doorknob that's sticky.
silly stuff.
Right. Tell me there's the ceiling falling down or something like that. So this is what is happening. It's such a multi-layered problem, and we're the bad guys in all of it. And actually, any business owner goes into any court, they've automatically got 2 strikes on them.
In New York, yeah. Unfortunately, it's stacked against logic and, you know.
Right. They feel that they are there to do something for the consumer. They feel obligated to give the consumer some money back.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's
yeah.
right or wrong, that's it. And this is what's going on. And there's not a point that they finally say, hey, this is not fair. Okay? It's not 60-40. It's 90-10.
Yeah. And look, I've known a lot of people who are also not millionaires, not billionaires. It's small, landlords that have small buildings, small properties. And, in New York right now, I think it's going to be an average of about 12 to 24 months to get a hold of a tenant out. And it's Brooklyn, Queens is very tough. The courts are bogged down. Not to say the other boroughs are a walk in the park, but it's just something so our viewers know that the court system is broken. And the system overall is broken when the man goes to elected officials who, in particular, some are on the Judiciary Committee, who wield power, who could even slowly start to make improvements and fix the mess, and they don't. And one of them tells you most people are paying. That's the uphill battle that a citizen in New York City goes through, and that's the reason we see a lot of people selling. We see a lot of people leaving to go to Florida and other states and just to get away from this mayhem, because the government here doesn't work for us. At least city government, our city government doesn't work for us. And in this man's case, unfortunately, it's working against him unjustified. It's going against you. And this is a disgrace. 8 years in October, this should have been resolved very quickly. Not even a year, but you're banging this out for 8 years. And $350,000 in losses, that's unacceptable. I mean, I don't even know what to tell you. I feel bad you'd even have to get to that point, but $350,000 is a lot of money, and to have to be out that to fight someone who is just gaming the system, it's just horrible.
Well, but look, I'm an engineer, so I can come up with a fair thing. If they did mandatory rent deposits on day 1, okay, and the landlord gets half and the court gets half, for whatever the issues are.
In escrow.
And as an escrow with the court.
Sure.
Okay? Most of these cases would fall away. Okay? Because most of the time the tenant is simply stalling because they're going to move to Florida. So they're trying to save up some money by simply not paying
At your expense.
at our expense. Okay?
Yeah.
I met other owners, when COVID hit, they just said they're not paying.
So,
even though they were still working.
So we could just touch on that for our viewers. So when we had the pandemic here, the law was changed where you can't evict anybody for not paying. And that went on for quite some time. And obviously, even if people had the money to pay, many people unfortunately said, hey, well, that's the law. I'm just not going to pay. And you as a landlord can't do anything about it. So it just made the problem even worse during those times for a lot of people who were already not collecting rent. Or maybe they had some tenants paying, and now you have most who aren't, or all who aren't. And,
Yeah,
it's terrible.
You had people paying some, they'd have 1, 2.
And there was a story in the Post, I remember, where a woman wasn't able to pay her own rent somewhere, was sleeping in her car, and she had a 2 or 3, small little building, 2 or 3 units, and all of her tenants weren't paying because of the COVID, and she's sleeping in a car in front of one of her properties, in a car. And I remember it was a story in the Post during the pandemic, but it just goes to show you how, to say the least, the cards are stacked against you.
Well, because part of this is that they keep filing new motions. There's no sit down, okay? There's no sit down in front of a judge to say, Your Honor, the first 24 statements were all nonsense and fluff. There is none. They just see the next motion come in. Okay, you answer the next motion. Okay, I'll see you in 3 or 4 months. All right?
So it's a long process without a process. It's a long process without a process. If you think about it, just no rhyme or reason.
Right. And that's what the problem is. I could have won this case 7 years ago if we could have sat down with the judge face to face and said, okay, 24 things are nonsense. Okay, just what I showed you. Okay, you want to laugh? I talked to George Santos, who was one of the few guys that was going to help me with this. And he read her deposition testimony. And George looked at it and said, this is nonsense. And why can't anyone else see this? Because they're so focused on doing the next step.
Shuffling.
You do the next, it's like a Roomba robot that used to bang into the wall and then reverse and then just go to the next piece of wall and then bang into the furniture.
Yeah, never ending.
And eventually you'd get the whole floor swept. So this is what the issue is, okay? And they could fix a lot of this. And this has probably cost taxpayers over $100,000 in her legal bills.
So you're out, the taxpayers are out, clogging up the courts. So the only winner are the holder tenants.
Right. There's no reason she can't be working. She's perfectly healthy, educated. She could get a job anywhere.
So professional squatters, unfortunately, is something of the norm here in New York City, especially since the pandemic, unfortunately, more and more so. And
she made herself poor by getting rid of the second bedroom. She just gave away all the furniture that actually belonged to the apartment.
So she's obviously knows the tactics to use to delay the system for almost 8 years. Today, we're almost at 8 years, come December.
Yeah, this is what is going on. And there's no process to say, what the hell is going on here?
And no elected officials that seem to really want to help or do anything.
There's a few, okay? There's a few that are actually trying to be reasonable and assist with this, okay? But there's not enough of them. And the hatred of the landlords is so deep that you're not changing their minds.
No.
You're not changing the minds of those people.
So you're the villain before you walk in.
Yeah, you're a villain with two full strikes. These cases would all be over if they said rent deposit day one. When you go to housing court, they allow the tenant 2 no-shows for absolutely no reason. They don't have to have an excuse, nothing. Just don't show up.
Don't show up.
If the landlord doesn't show up for those,
Default judgment. So one tier of rules and justice for one set of people and one for the landlord?
Right. Yeah, the day they file, come up with a rent check. Automatic, that's it. It's very simple for the court. And all these cases would fall away.
Well, listen, I don't disagree with what you're saying. Unfortunately, here in New York City, we have a lot of issues. The courts are just one of them. But unfortunately, we know that Tom is far and few not the only one out there that's experienced or going through this, and that will go through this, unfortunately. And we need our elected officials to do the right thing, which in New York is like holding your breath. But, always keep our fingers crossed. Maybe there's a few out there, like you said, that are trying to be reasonable. But it just goes to show that this is, for a lack of terminology, a travesty of justice. And obviously it's costing this man a lot of money that's unnecessary for someone that shouldn't be there, that's not paying, but he's paying the price in multiple ways. Not, time-wise, financially, stress, it's lawyers, it's aggravating, court costs. So, unfortunately, this is the situation the man's in. We're hoping that Tom will reach out to us in the near future with an update that it's resolved and he get the unit back, but we don't want to hold our breath because we know New York is, very challenging, to be kind, to work through the court system, especially housing court.
No, this is going to be another 2 years.
So you anticipate a total of 10 years before it's wrapped up and finished?
Yes.
And resolved? So a decade?
Yes.
So your $350,000 within 8 years is going to rise to, if you had to guess, what do you think that cost is going to cap out at in 10 years, in a decade? 500?
Probably.
So you're looking at a civil servant, a taxpayer, a citizen, that is not a rich man, who's got a small property, and he's looking at a decade of nonsense and potentially $500,000 to get a holdover tenant out.
Right. Well, now they want me to pay them.
So pay them to leave.
Yes.
So maybe you should fund their Florida trip. Is that, for lack of terminology, I'm just being facetious, but is that what it comes down to?
You
She
know.
wants to go to Florida, maybe hit you up. Maybe the judge will say, if you give her enough money, I'll get her out.
I shouldn't have to do that.
Oh, I agree. You shouldn't.
You know, I've had people that I knew personally had people break into their house. Okay? The alarm is going off, the cops show up, and the guy says he lived there. Okay? 3 people I know, that exact thing happened to them.
This is in Brooklyn?
All over the place.
In New York City.
Yeah, New York City. They broke in and just simply said, I live here.
So
The alarm is going off.
Hi, I live here.
Yes.
Oh,
And the police look at you and tell them, go to court.
Not
Like-
arrested, nothing. Just, hey, here's a paper. Go see the judge.
Who is this person? They have no idea who the person is.
Wow.
I've had that with people sneaking into my basement. And the police tell me, no, you have to let them in. I said, they don't live here. No, it's public. So the halls and my basement are now public.
Public.
They're public.
So I guess New York City is saying that property owners have no rights.
Right.
Or very little.
No, they consider the roof, the hallways, the basement, the backyard, everything is public property.
So getting hung out to dry, but at the same time, they're expecting you to pay your property taxes, pay your other bills, mortgage, maintenance, all the other stuff that comes along with it, and do your, property upkeep. But at the same time, they're dragging you through what unfortunately you're anticipating will be a decade and $500,000 of basically nonsense.
Well, here's the other problem. When you talk to a lot of elected officials and some tenants, they think maintaining an apartment is like $100 a month. Okay?
Not New York City.
I actually had one neighbor complain that it cost the landlord $0 for him to live there.
Wow.
Okay? $0. All right? And so when public officials look at this and they say, okay, well, the rent is $2,500, so your expenses are obviously only $400 or $500 a month, so you have a $2,000 a month profit, so you can afford to give up that amount of money.
Yeah, that's a sick way to look at things.
They have no idea they just keep deducting everything. So if you have vacancies, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's not money off the rent. Okay, if you have bills, it doesn't matter. All right, so all of these things, you're not allowed to make any profit. You're not allowed to pay interest on loans to do work. Okay, that's just, so if I spend $100,000 and put a new roof on the house, okay, they don't consider that an expense. Okay, they consider that is just maintenance. You could have just coated that with some roof tar for $39 from Home Depot.
Instead of doing the whole roof the right way.
They think appliances last 30 years. Okay?
Unfortunately, they don't.
Right. That's what they just did with the new kitchens. They said you can only replace the kitchen every 30 years. And I believe they said you can only spend $15,000 for a kitchen that's supposed to last 30 years. The cheapest kitchen out there is more than $15,000, much less one that's going to last 30 years.
I agree.
But it's landlord's money. So it's different, it's like science fiction.
Yeah, no, listen, it's why we wanted to have Tom sit down with us today. It's a very troubling story. Unfortunately, you're going through a lot of nonsense that we don't wish upon anybody, and we know you're not the first one to go through it. You won't be the last one. There's probably thousands of other small landlords like yourself throughout the 5 boroughs that are involved in some kind of shenanigans like this with some kind of weird tenants, that hold over squatters, whatever you want to call them. And we wanted to shed some light on this. I think most people in New York have the consensus that housing court is very tilted, or it's not very landlord friendly, which we get. But I think for our viewers out there to see this story, and I'm sure there's many of them out there. We can't cover everybody, but we wanted to cover Tom today and just let him speak his piece and tell our viewers what's going on, what's his situation, and the fact that it's 8 years, 350,000, and you're anticipating, forecasting $500,000 in a decade. I mean, it's crazy. You could have done something a lot better with that time and money than have to go to housing court and deal with incompetent system, a broken system.
Right, and now I'm raising the rents on my other tenants.
Well, what choice do you
have? I
have?
have no choice.
Yeah, what choice do you have?
Okay, and a lot of them are very good people.
Sure.
Okay, they have children themselves, and I got to turn around and tell them, sorry, I have to raise your rent
because of
$200 or $300
to offset
because I'm losing 1/8 of my rent for all of these years.
Yeah.
Plus my legal expenses. So I'm losing 1/6 of my income. So guess what? When you have other tenants,
they have to absorb it.
They have to absorb it, which absolutely is not fair.
No. Well, look, we hope it doesn't go another 2 years. Honestly, I mean, that's terrible already, and it's enough is enough. But we hope when it does get resolved, you'll reach out to us. We can do a follow-up, and hopefully you'll have possession of the property, and you'll be able to get a good tenant, market rate. You won't have to deal with any of these court fiascos or anything like that. But
honestly, if you want to follow up, why don't you follow up with John Lou? Why don't you follow up with the Judiciary Committee Chairman? We got one for the Senate and one for the Assembly.
I'll tell you what.
Why don't you ask them?
We will. I'll tell you what. I'll make sure that we stop in if they don't take our phone calls. Not only elected officials like to take our calls, but we will stop in, knock on the door one day. I'll go with my producer Z. We're very friendly. We'll come dressed appropriately. We'll be polite. And we will go on behalf of someone we interview, Tom, and say, hey, what do you have to say about this situation? And maybe they'd like to speak on the camera, which I highly doubt, but we will give them the opportunity to speak if they might.
Yeah, because they should do this for everyone.
Agree. Not just you, but there's a lot of people suffering, not just you. Yeah.
Make mandatory rent deposits.
All right.
All the cases would go away.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to go follow up with John Luke, and I can't promise anyone in the staff will talk to us or entertain, but we're going to attempt to.
You got Levine, and I forget the other gentleman who was with the Senate. Levine is with the...
We'll get the list of folks when we finish up. We'll get the list from Tom. We'll follow up with them, see if we can get them on the phone. If not, we'll stop by their office, give them a little knock, a friendly knock, stop by and see if they'll talk to us. I highly doubt they're going to speak with us on camera. Just being very honest, our viewers already know that. I'm sure you have a good information. But nonetheless, we'll show up. And being that we are credentialed members of the press, we'll ask them that we'd like to at least sit down with them off camera. And, we have some questions on behalf of Tom and other people this is happening to, and why it's happening and what, if anything, is being done. And maybe we'll see if they'll go on camera. I doubt it. But we will attempt to get them to make contact with us and at least give us some kind of explanation and update you and our viewers if we can get that far. I'm not making any promises because, we don't want to get our hopes up. But we will attempt to on your behalf and just for our viewers to follow up on the story. And I want to thank Tom for coming in and sharing this story with everybody. It's unfortunately not, Pixies and Pixies and bubblegum we're talking about, but it was a story we wanted to tell on your behalf, and hopefully it will help sooner or later do some change, not only for you, but for other people that this is happening to, has happened to, and will happen to behind you.
Thank you very much.
Tom, appreciate you.
Okay.
Peter Koufalis here with Tom at Jackson Diner in Jackson Heights. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And hope everybody's safe out there. Be kind to each other. Take care, guys.